Welcome to Ask Dad, where we talk about items ranging all over the board on questions that my kids have asked me or other people ask me, or questions that you may just ask a parent. And in today's video, we're going to talk about credit cards versus debit cards. So jumping right into that, there is a question, and this has come up a lot in our household, but there was a question that I ran across on Reddit that says, is there any logic on when to use a debit card versus a credit card? And this poster, RXSPIIR, says, I've never really felt much of a difference. They're both nearly the same to me essentially. Eventually do have to pay off the balance with the credit card, which I do every month. It almost feels like an extension of my debit bank account than it does an entirely different entity. But are there any scenarios in which one is more beneficial to the other? And the answer is absolutely there is a difference. And what it largely comes down to me is knowing yourself and knowing if you have the self-control to use a credit card. And it gets a whole lot more complicated than that, so let's jump into a few of the differences. So right out of the gates, this is a website called Compare Remit, and they talk about the differences between a debit card and a credit card, and we're going to use this graphic for no other reason than it's a good way for us to start the discussion. So debit cards, of course, do not have annual fees, typically. It's your own money, so you're using your money from a bank. Credit cards sometimes can have annual fees, but many do not, and it really depends on what type of credit card you get. There's some reward cards, especially airline reward cards that charge hefty fees, but the benefits they can offer are pretty substantial. Building credit is one of the big reasons to use a credit card versus a debit card. If on a debit card, obviously you're not getting any advantage out of building credit. On a credit card, you do most of the time. There are some credit cards that do not report to the credit agencies, so you'll want to check when you apply for a card if in fact they do report to a credit reporting agencies. The major ones do. Some of the smaller ones I have seen not, and especially secured credit cards where you have to give them a deposit and use it. I have seen those not. So that is a question you'll always want to look into. Do they report to the credit agencies when you get a credit card? Fraud protection is another very large benefit that you get with a credit card. So with a debit card, of course, it's using your money. It's pulling it out of a bank account. And if someone steals your card number or steals your card and puts a charge on it, it comes right out of your bank. If you report fraud, your bank will look into it, but the money is still already gone. They may eventually refund the money to you, but that can take days or weeks or longer, and they may eventually deny your claim. With a credit card on fraud protection, in our experience, and we've had thousands of dollars added to a credit card fraudulently, you call the credit card company, you report the fraud, and because it's not out of your bank account, it's usually wiped out the same day, or they may investigate for a couple of days. But even if they're investigating the theft, it's not coming from your bank account, it's coming from someone else's money. So it becomes a temporary hold that you just can't spend, but it's not money that you're losing out of your account. That can be a very big distinction. Interest. Now, of course, on a debit card, there is no interest because it's your money. It's coming from your account. On a credit card, you usually have a grace period of between 20 to 30 days, during which if you pay off the balance, there is no interest. If you don't pay off the balance within that grace period, and you'll want to check your credit card to determine what that grace period is, but if you don't pay it off, you'll pay generally somewhere between 20 to 30% interest in today's interest rates on that credit card balance. And if you're trying to pay a minimum balance or a minimum payment, you'll never get that paid off in any reasonable amount of time. So that's where credit cards become a problem, is if someone does not manage their expenses and they're paying over time. They don't pay their credit card off within the grace period. Even paying it off monthly may not be enough. Don't wait for your statement to get there, because that's usually after your grace period on some of these purchases. And if you can avoid paying interest, a credit card can be a great tool. The rewards are also another very beneficial piece of the credit cards. Now, some debit cards do have rewards, but generally credit cards far exceed the benefits of a debit card. So we use travel cards. Some people use the cash back cards, where you'll actually get cash back on your purchases. Now imagine this: if you're charging a lot to your credit card and you pay it off within the grace period, so you're not paying any interest, and you get cash back at the end of the year, that seems like a pretty good deal. The only downside is if you start to pay interest. If you pay it off, though, it's a benefit. We've been able to take a lot of trips, going to hotels and airlines with the travel benefits that come from the credit card, and you can travel for free. Now, granted, you have to spend the money on other things, but sometimes you're spending that money anyway, like on groceries or utilities or business expenses or work expenses. If you can put all those on your credit card and pay it off within the grace period and get rewards for that, that's a great way to save some money. Now let's go to a couple of the other things that I've found, or at least one of the other things that I've found that is a huge benefit of credit cards over debit cards, and that is the issue of temporary holds. This is usually seen on purchases where they don't know what your purchase amount will be. So for example, hotels will take a temporary hold on your credit card. A very common one is gas stations will put a temporary hold on your credit card. And if that happens, that temporary hold on a debit card is money that's no longer available to be spent. On a credit card, it's money that's not able to be spent out of your credit card balance or your available credit, but it's not money that you're paying interest on, and it's not money out of your account. So here's how this can work. The other day I went to a gas station and I put my card in, and they put a temporary hold on my card for $175. Well, that transaction didn't go, it froze. There was a problem at the gas pump, and the gas pump froze up, so I had to cancel it. And I had to redo my temporary hold. I put my card back in, I put another temporary hold for another $175, so now I'm at $350. And that's okay, but there are some people who are tight on money on a given time. Well, that temporary hold now of $350, after I filled up, it was another $80 that they charged to my account as a temporary hold, but it actually went through. But now I'm sitting at over $400 on one single gas transaction that will eventually be released, but a temporary hold can take 3 to 5 days usually to get released. And during that time frame, if you've used a debit card, that's a lot of money that's been tied up in your account that is no longer available. Some people, that'll be fine, they'll have that balance in there, but there are some people, especially younger, if you're students or otherwise, where a $400 hold on your credit card for a number of days may interfere with a rent payment or a utility payment or a phone payment or something. Whereas with a credit card, it's not a big deal. It just drops off and it never actually goes through. So those are the main benefits with credit cards and debit cards. If you have the self-control to use a credit card and pay it off within the grace period, not every month, but within the grace period, it can be a great tool, and it can even offer some ancillary rewards. Maybe give you some extra cash back at the end of the year, or give you some travel benefits. And if you're able to handle that payment, great. If you know yourself and you're not, stick with a debit card. It's your money. You can budget within your means, which you should be doing also with a credit card, but it's your money. You should be budgeting, and you make sure that you're not getting in over your head with debt. If this video has been helpful, please like and subscribe down below. If you know someone who this content may be beneficial to, please feel free to share the video. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you on the next trip.